For the first time ever, the New England Patriots win a postseason game in Denver. They had been 0-4 in Denver in the postseason, 0-3 during the Brady and Belichick years. They pull off the victory 10-7 in a game that became a defensive struggle, mainly because the offenses were struggling to do anything once the snow started in the second half. And look, there's a lot that can be said about this one. I want to start big picture. I want to go back to October of 2023 when Mike Vrabel was inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame. He made a comment that day about the importance of appreciating what the Patriots have, what the fans have, because it's not like this everywhere. And that was interpreted in a certain way by his employer at the time in Tennessee. And some would say that was the first domino that resulted in Mike Vrabel being fired. And when he was fired by the Titans, there was a thought that he would land right away with the Patriots. The problem is they already had a commitment in writing to elevate Gerard Mayo to be the successor to Bill Belichick. 1 year later, when they decided Gerard Mayo wasn't the guy, they moved quickly because they knew what they wanted to do. And look at how it has worked out in just one season. I thought they'd make the playoffs because their schedule, if you haven't heard, was very easy this year. I remember before the season, we looked at the win-loss total of 7.5, and then you looked at the games one by one, and they were favored in like 11 of them. It really was an easy schedule, but they won the games. Good teams win the games they're supposed to win. And by the time the postseason rolled around, it didn't matter. They took care of business. There will be naysayers. There will be. The Chargers didn't play their best game in the wild card round. The Texans had all those turnovers from C.J. Stroud. And then the weather became a factor that allowed the Patriots to hold on to their second half lead. Regardless, they showed up and they won those games. They played well. They played well enough. And here they are heading to the Super Bowl yet again. It was their 16th AFC championship. They are 12-4 in AFC championships. That's amazing because, look, it's never an easy game. It's never a gimme. And they're 12-4 in those games. And now back in the Super Bowl for the first time since Super Bowl 53. They'll be in Santa Clara. We'll find out soon enough who they'll be taking on. For now, though, because of the weather in the second half, and the numbers are amazing, they look like first half stats. 206 yards of offense for the Patriots, 161 yards of offense, 181 yards for the Broncos. That's the full freaking game. But you have to take that into account when you're up a score, when you're in position to go up 10, facing 4th and 1. And Sean Payton has said on PFT Live in the past that he doesn't focus on analytics. He takes the bigger picture view. It's just a factor in the broader assessment of the situation. They were calling for it on the broadcast, kick the field goal. I'd say most fans that pay close attention to the sport recognize that was a spot where you want to go up 2 scores and put more pressure on the Patriots. When you start to go behind by multiple scores, especially a young quarterback, you may be inclined to do more desperate things, take more chances, and maybe make a mistake that turns a 2-score game into a 3-score game. But backup quarterback, and I understand, and I'm sure Sean Payton will explain that he had confidence in Jarrett Stidham. They had confidence in the play call. Look, the play call wasn't good. It wasn't executed well. The Patriots got the ball. And yes, it went back and forth a little bit after that, but they were in a field position battle. And if the one big moment was not kicking the field goal, the other big moment was the Jarrett Stidham play where he kind of looked like Max Brosmer in his debut this year for the Vikings against the Seahawks, where you get overwhelmed and you just try to make something happen instead of accepting, I've got to just eat the ball, I've got to go down. Because the two-handed pass was a backward pass, not a forward pass. And I wrote about this at PFT, and I think this is an example of the issues currently with officiating and replay review. The officials got it wrong on the field. No brainer. It was clearly a backward pass. They called it a forward pass. They threw a flag for intentional grounding. And then Alex Kemp, the referee, told us all after discussion, it was a backward pass recovered by the Patriots. Now, there wasn't nearly enough explanation because in a game like this, you have millions watching who are more casual football fans than the people who are dialed in all the time. And they're going to be confused by this. And I'm not sure the broadcast did the best job of making it clear exactly what had transpired and why it wasn't a defensive touchdown. The reason is simple. The whistle blew when the ball hit the ground because the officials thought it was a forward pass. So even though the continuing action allows the Patriots to recover the fumble, it doesn't allow them to return it 12 yards for the touchdown. They still scored. The issue there is just one of the basic transparency and what the hell, and it should have been a defensive touchdown, and they shouldn't have had to take the final 12 yards. But they did, and they did because Stidham panicked, and he did the two-handed pass that went backward and gave the ball to the Patriots. And in a close game like that, those two issues, the bad decision by Payton, the bad decision by Stidham, that's more than enough for the New England Patriots because the weather arrived, and it arrived in a big way. At one point in the second half, CBS showed different shots of the field throughout the game, and it was fine until late in the third quarter. The snow's accumulating. You saw the footing for both sides. Usually when snow is accumulating, the offense has a little bit of an edge because they know where they're going. The defense is trying to react. You're more likely when you make a sudden move as you're trying to read what the guy you're trying to tackle is doing, you're more likely to slip and fall. But the offenses couldn't do anything. And really, the blocked field goal, it wasn't obviously blocked. It looked like the wind took it, but it was blocked by the Patriots. That kept it from going to 10-10. And if the game had gone to 10-10 in the fourth quarter, there's a good chance they'd still be playing at midnight local time. Because I don't know how anybody was going to move the ball and score. It was going to come down to one big mistake. And I got to the point where I said to my son, we were watching the game, hey, the only way the Broncos are going to win this game is with a defensive touchdown. And you saw what the Patriots did late in the game. They didn't put the ball in the air. They kept the ball on the ground. They ran it, and then they converted the third down with Drake May running for it, and that was it. No timeouts, run the clock, and get out of there with the victory. And it's a shame, and I feel bad for Broncos fans, everything they put into the season. They got the number 1 seed. It was a magical year for them. The city was swept up in it. They'd been 8-2 in conference championship games going into this one. So they have a long history of winning when they get there. And it had been a long time since they'd gotten there, 10 years. Faced the Patriots and Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and Bill Belichick. And they beat them with Peyton Manning and company 10 years ago. I thought even though they were 4.5 and it ultimately went down to 3.5-point underdogs, I thought the Broncos would win straight up. Now, at least I got the cover, which I think clinches the full season competition with Sims. Not that anybody cares about it other than me and him, but we both care about it a lot. So even though I picked the Broncos to win, I did pick them to cover, and they did by a 0.5 point or 1.5 depending upon where the line was at the time. You may have, if you were being responsible, placed just a little bit of action to make it a little more interesting for yourself. It was interesting enough for me because I knew that Sims had the Patriots covering and I had the Broncos, and I had the Broncos staying within at least 3.5 or 4.5 points. Now, is there enough from the Patriots when we look at the outcome of this to make us believe that they can beat the Seahawks or the Rams? I think they're going to have a harder time against the Seahawks than they would against the Rams. I think all Patriots fans need to be hoping for a rematch of Super Bowl 53. I think the Patriots will have a hard time with the Seahawks defense, a harder time with that defense than they'll have with the Rams defense, because Drake May is still far from a finished product. And the good news is he's just getting started. He's younger than Tom Brady was when Tom Brady even started his first game. He's got years left to grow and develop, and they're just scratching the surface on the Josh McDaniels offense. So, all the people out there that were happy when the Patriots finally dissipated, they're back, and they got it back together quickly. I mean, they bottomed out 2 straight years of 4-13. Bill Belichick lost his fastball, got fired. Gerard Mayo, as I said earlier, it didn't work, and they fell into Mike Vrabel, and they earned Drake May the old-fashioned way by being really bad in 2023, brought Josh McDaniels back, and they've put the foundation together very quickly. They spent the money in free agency. They addressed their many deficiencies. The cupboard was getting bare from a talent standpoint, in large part due to some of the mistakes made by a front office that ultimately was run by Bill Belichick, and here they are. I think both teams have the foundation in place to continue to be competitive, to continue to be playoff teams, to continue to cross paths in playoff games. And maybe the next time around, it'll be a playoff game that isn't affected by weather. You know, a lot of us complain, me included, that we see these teams giving up their home field advantage, whether it's the Browns rushing to build a dome, the Bears wanting to build a dome. More and more teams seem to want to get out of the elements so they can have a cash factory all year round. And there's a certain romance to the idea of football in the elements, but there were times this afternoon where it was a little frustrating because you didn't get to see the best of both teams. And it really did become a factor. And it all goes back to those early game decisions. What kind of a game is it going to be? It's one thing to make a key fourth down decision late because you already know what kind of a game it's been. When it's early, you have to make that projection. What kind of a game is it going to be? And I don't think the forecast in Denver was clearly calling for what happened. But this time of year in Denver, what happened can happen at any time. So all the more reason, and I think Sean Payton is going to be kicking himself, and this is going to cause him to lose sleep. And you think of all the times since Payton and the Saints went to the Super Bowl 16 years ago. Think of those teams, and it was mainly the later years of the last decade. They would get close, and something screwy would happen. They had the Minneapolis Miracle that kept them from advancing to the NFC Championship in 2017. They had the horrible missed pass interference call that kept them from going to the Super Bowl in 2018. And it was like every year they would get back, they would get close, and then there would just be something that happened. It just demonstrates how thin the margins get when you get to this level. We don't see a lot of blowouts in the playoffs anymore. We see some. We saw the Seahawks blow out the 49ers. But boy, in these close games, it's a play here, a play there, a decision here, a decision there, a bad call here, which becomes a good call there for the other team. And fortunately, officiating didn't ultimately affect this thing. Fortunately, that play I talked about earlier, the Patriots ultimately parlayed the officiating mistake into a touchdown. But if I had to point to one thing that made the difference in this one, it's that decision by Sean Payton to not take the field goal. And how often do we see that happen early in a key game where in the name of being aggressive or in deference to the Ivy League PhD who's talking into the headset, the chart says go for it. Well, right, but sometimes we need to make a decision that is more informed by the bigger picture. What kind of a game do we think this is going to be? What kind of a game do we want it to be? And I know if the Broncos had gone up 14-0 in that moment, it changes everything. But 10-0 makes it, I mean, that's an acceptable compromise. Let's take the 10 and let's put the Patriots with an inexperienced quarterback in a hole. He only had 41 passing yards in the first half. That was his lowest first half output the entire season. They really could have gotten the Patriots on the ropes if they had gone up 10. I don't want to excessively harp on the point, but I also think that that's the one thing. In a game that got sluggish, in a game that had 17 total points, those 3 points that the Broncos sacrificed, that ability to have a 2-score lead and to put maximum pressure on a young quarterback and maybe get the backbreaker with an interception, a pick six, a mistake, a Ramondre Stevenson fumble, anything, when you're just feeling a little tighter because you feel like the season is starting to slip away from you. That was a blown opportunity by the Denver Broncos. And I don't want to take anything away from what they did this year. But what you did to get to the championship game doesn't matter. What matters is what did you do to advance? And at the end of the day, the Patriots made the good decisions. They didn't make the bad decision. The Patriots played their brand of football. The Patriots found a way to end up getting 3 more points than the Denver Broncos. And now they'll head back to the Super Bowl, trying to get to number 7. 7. I think that will tie. Will that tie the 4? I have to look it up again. It's been so long since we've been calculating and tabulating Patriots Super Bowl wins. I got to go do some research. I think 7 gets them to the record or ties the record. The Steelers have 6. The Patriots have 6. I think the 49ers have 7. So they could go to the 49ers stadium and get number 7. And the 49ers fans won't know who to root for. Do we root for the dynasty that can lay claim to all-time Super Bowl greatness that otherwise belongs to us? Or do we root for a division rival? Because either way, they're going to be seeing the Rams or the Seahawks head to Levi's Stadium. We'll be there as well in just 2 weeks to find out whether or not the Patriots, in one of the most unlikely seasons we could have imagined. Look, it was reasonable to think they could be good. It was unreasonable to think they would be great. And it was crazy to think, even though they finished as the number 2 seed, that they would punch their ticket to a Super Bowl in the first year of Mike Vrabel's time with the team. And good for Vrabel. He had the number 1 seed at one point with the Tennessee Titans. It didn't work out there. I wonder if the Titans are kicking themselves about firing Vrabel. I wonder how Bill Belichick's feeling right about now about the team he now hates. Either way, it's an opportunity for ring number 7 for the New England Patriots, and it's coming in only 2 weeks against either the Rams or the Seahawks. We'll have plenty more about this at ProFootballTalk.com, and as we discuss the looming Super Bowl 60 in the coming days on Pro Football Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.